Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the College of Arts and Society at Coventry University and to our Dealey Derbyshire building. I am Steve Dawkins, the Associate Dean of the College. It's really nice to see all of you here. Can I extend a specific welcome to two great friends of the university? We've got Pauline Black at the front here, who most of you I think probably know, who is the Deputy Lieutenant of the West Midlands. And then we've also got the Lord Mayor of Coventry, Rachel Lancaster. So thank you both for coming. Today's an apt day for us to be doing an event here, which is the kind of introduction to the book launch for the Up the Youth Club by Emma. As you probably gathered, we've got an open day on today, and so we've got lots of people coming into the university who are thinking about what the next part of their journey is going to be. So, as I say, it's an apt day to come in. In the college, we're really proud of the kind of outreach work that we do with people, but there's something. But the book that's launching today shows a different kind of side of the kind of education that happens in somewhere like Coventry. So it shines a different light on the experience of young people in Coventry. It's a book that implicitly and explicitly shows the value of youth work and education that takes place outside of places like this, and I don't diminish that at all. It is fundamentally important, I think, to young people today and has been historically. So it provides a historical overview of youth work, and it makes really pertinent comments about the value of youth and education work in the past, but also what kind of things we need to be thinking about for the future. So it's one of the kind of, as the subtitle of the book makes clear, this is part of the hidden history of Coventry, and it's what makes part of what makes Coventry Coventry. So thank you to Fyah Fest for coming today and using the kind of facilities here. It's really nice that you are. Thank you for Emma for launching the book today here. And thank you very much for your attendance here as well. It's really important to us that we are part of the kind of community out there and that we're not just kind of an ivory tower. So thank you. And then finally, just thank you to the sound techs and everybody else who's made this kind of event happen. So thank you very much, everybody. And I'm going to hand over now to Rachel, the Lord Mayor of Coventry. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today at the Dealey Derbyshire building in the heart of Coventry for this exciting and important event, the launch of Up the Youth Club by Emma. As Lord Mayor of Coventry, I'm proud to welcome you all to this celebration of youth culture, creativity and community. Coventry has a rich history of youth spaces, and today's event reminds us of the vital role that youth clubs have played in shaping the city's identity. They've been places of safety, inspiration and transformation where music and sport and culture have flourished and where generations have found their voice. I'd like to commend Emma Warren for shining a light on the stories that deserve to be heard and remembered. I also want to thank the House of Emanuel and Fyah Kamp for curating this powerful programme, not just for today but across the entire 4-day festival. You're showcasing the best of Coventry talent, energy and vision. I'm particularly pleased that this is a focus on youth. In the noughties, I set up a youth club in Holbrooks. There was nothing in the area at the time, and we took over what was an old library building from the council after begging and pleading. This is before my history as a politician. I worked in the community as a development officer, and so we started a couple of times a week to bring young people in, to give them somewhere that was safe for them to meet, to take them off the streets and to listen to them and start their journey of trust in our community, and many of those come to me when I'm in Holbrooks walking down the street and say, oh, I remember when we did this or we did that, or we did a trip up to London Towers, or we sat and we just made Christmas cards, or we danced and we sang, and it was everyone together, and I didn't have to stay at home, or it saved me from being at home. And I think that was the most important thing. People from backgrounds where they needed to get away from their home life found somewhere of sanctuary. And of course, Coventry, the city of peace and reconciliation and sanctuary, is something that I talk about a lot. So as we look to the future, we need to continue to invest in youth spaces. We need to continue to empower young voices and build a city where creativity and community thrive hand in hand. So thank you very much for inviting me to this celebration. I wish you a very exciting and inspiration afternoon, and I'm going to now hand over to Deputy Lieutenant of the West Midlands, Pauline Black, a wonderful representative for our city. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I mean, it is, if I may say, thank you to the Lord Mayor as well for her speech. It's a privilege to stand here before you all today as a representative of His Majesty King Charles III's Lieutenancy here in the West Midlands. As a Deputy Lieutenant of the West Midlands, I bring with me the support and the recognition of the Crown and of our region. King Charles has 4 priorities for the Lieutenancy. These are community, climate, Commonwealth, and culture. And I think your events planned for the next 4 days will probably encompass all those priorities, if not more. I want to thank Emanuel and everybody involved with Fyah Kamp, who've made this 4-day festival possible, and to Emma Warren for highlighting the vital role of youth clubs across the UK and Northern Ireland in her book, Up the Youth Club, which is launching here today. This powerful story tells how youth club spaces, from Victorian boys and girls clubs to the music-generating hubs of recent decades, have had an enormous, yet often unseen, impact on music, sport, culture, and society. So let me initially start by describing Coventry's contribution to this shifting story. Here in Coventry, I want to pay respects to 2 remarkable institutions: Holyhead Youth Centre in Lower Holyhead Road and Hillfields Young People's Centre on Yardley Street. These were not merely buildings. They were sanctuaries of hope for our youth. For generations, they offered refuge and inspiration to young people, navigating the complexities of life, social, educational, and cultural. In these spaces, resilience was not just taught, it was lived. Coventry's Caribbean origin youth in particular have faced countless systemic barriers: racial discrimination, housing instability, educational exclusion. Yet from these challenges emerged extraordinary strength through music, dance, storytelling, and activism. They claimed space. They claimed their voice, and they built movements. Holyhead Youth Centre is no longer what it once was, but for those of us who lived it, it remains unforgettable. I remember the basement in the late 70s, or perhaps I should say last century. It was dark, it was dank, the kind of place that smelled of damp concrete and furious teenage ambition. The walls were bare, the lighting unforgiving, and the heating, well, we kept warm by moving. But none of that mattered, because in that basement, something extraordinary happened. People came together, united by a shared love of music. Back then, Holyhead Youth Centre was a warren of rooms, both above ground and below. A local celebrity and singer at the time, Ray King, was heavily involved. Many local youth who considered themselves musicians would play in Ray King's soul band at one time or another. They looked up to Ray as he was doing what they wanted to do. Some would do their musical apprenticeship with Ray, find out what it was like being on the road in an old beat-up van, journeying the highways and byways of Britain. That's where people who would later be among the Coventry two-tone bands, like the Specials and the Selector, cut their teeth. Me among them, as I would later become lead singer of the Selector. A whole project expanded out of those humble beginnings. Not just music, but a sound system, a football team, and a netball team, all under the collective name of Jabadis. What people always miss is that before the bands, there were the sound systems. And before the stages, there were the streets. If you were lucky, there were havens like youth centres. The Jabadis sound system was one of Coventry's most influential cultural forces in the mid-70s, a lifeline for Caribbean origin youth. It wasn't just about playing records. It was about claiming space, amplifying voices that mainstream Britain too often ignored. As Neville Staple, singer in the Specials, recounts in his biography, Original Rude Boy, From Borstal to the Specials, it was through sound system culture that many young people first found their rhythm, their confidence, their community. Jabadis was more than music. It was mentorship. It was a movement. It laid the groundwork for what would become a global phenomenon in the two-tone movement. It was a fierce community, a declaration of presence. As time went on, a number of bands were either formed at or closely associated with the Holyhead Road Youth Centre. Pharaoh's Kingdom, Earthbound, Night Train, Hardtop 22, which I know you will hear more about later from Amos Anderson, who's probably sitting here thinking, I know more about it than you do, and Transposed Men. There was a fluidity and interchangeability between members before the classic two-tone lineup settled. So it is true to say that basement beneath Holyhead Youth Centre was the place where the seeds of two-tone were planted, and from that soil, a whole history has been created, the ethos of which is arguably one of Coventry's best exports. Two-tone bands like the Specials and the Selector that came out of this nascent beginning, they took that raw energy and they shaped it into something revolutionary. Holyhead Youth Centre helped us all get started. We learned from elders, from sound system operators, from each other, as we carried that spirit onto stages across the UK and beyond. Two-tone wasn't just a genre. It was a philosophy, an ethos, a declaration that black and white youth could stand together, play together, and fight injustice together. In our current flag-obsessed country, I hark back to our use of the black and white checkerboard flag. It wasn't just a fashion. It was a flag of unity and not division. Holyhead Youth Centre was a birthplace of that sound, a place where young people didn't just rehearse. Their music became a bridge between cultures and a battering ram against inequality and those seeking to divide us. Today, our city is home to over 70,000 young people, many from diasporic and refugee backgrounds. Therefore, the lessons of Caribbean origin youth resilience are more vital than ever. These centres have nurtured mentors, artists, youth workers, change makers, individuals who continue to shape our communities with courage and creativity. We should honour those who turned marginalisation into a movement. I'd like to honour Courtney Griffiths, KC, who suddenly passed away this year. Called to the bar in 1980, just as two-tone was taking over the mainstream music business. Educated at Bablake School in Coventry and then the LSE in London. Let us all thank him for his enduring service. Members of Future Shock, whose dance electrified a generation. People like Dr. Robert Beckford, Neville Staples, Trisha Dudu, whose voices echo across academia, music and the media. We extend heartfelt thanks to the Caribbean elders and cultural practitioners whose wisdom laid the foundation for today's youth empowerment that we see here today. We remember with deep gratitude Linda Ash, whose work at Hillfields Young People's Centre in Yardley Street here in Coventry touched countless lives. Her spirit lives on in every young person who found safety and inspiration within those walls and currently in Positive Youth Foundation. And today, Fyah Kamp proudly hosts this launch, a moment that celebrates our city's youth work legacy and opens the debate for what comes next. Fyah Kamp is not just a collective, it is a movement, a youth-led force, blending music, theatre and activism to empower young people and challenge injustice. From Locks, Keys and Coasts at the Albany Theatre here in Coventry to Celebration 2025 at the Daimler Powerhouse, Fyah Kamp has spotlighted youth talent and innovation. And now here with Fyah Fest 2025, they offer a 4-day celebration of music, fashion, cultural education and sport, culminating in a dynamic programme that reignites the spirit of the youth in Coventry and its spaces. This is generational change and a legacy in motion. So as we look to the future, let us remember Coventry's strength lies in its ability to honour its past. The story of Caribbean origin youth is not a chapter, it's a cornerstone. And let us continue to build and protect spaces where young people feel safe, seen, and inspired to lead. The Lieutenancy proudly supports those initiatives that reflect the spirit of unity, creativity, and courage, values deeply embedded in Coventry's youth legacy. And may Holyhead Road and Yardley Street youth centres not only be remembered, but reimagined, not only historic, but visionary. I thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. What a powerful, illuminating recount of the impact that youth clubs have had in Coventry. It was great to hear that. Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this panel discussion on youth club culture. We're celebrating the launch of this fantastic book called Up the Youth Club, Illuminating a Hidden History. Lots of them over there. Please do take a look when you get the moment. It's written by Emma Warren, who's travelled all the way up from London to join us today. Thank you so much for being here. We know that youth clubs aren't what they used to be. After decades of cuts, hundreds of them have closed, but they've had such a huge impact on the lives in this city in particular. And Emma's book is a searching look at the rise and fall of UK youth club culture with a lens on their impact in Coventry, with a couple of chapters that we're going to get into today. That's what this conversation is all about. It's very much reciprocal, so I'll be coming to you for questions as well that you have at the end. So I'm sure lots of us have had experiences of youth clubs in Coventry, whether ourselves or our children. So I'll introduce the panel, starting with myself. I'm Colleen Harris. I'm a journalist born in Coventry, and I'll be steering this chat through 3 generations in the city. Emma Warren, to my left, is a documentarian of music and culture and the author of several books. As I say, Up the Youth Club is the latest one, so thank you. Amos Anderson is the beneficiary of the Holyhead Youth Club, and he's also a retired lecturer in business and international business at Coventry University. We have Michael Apuko, who came through Yardley Street Youth Club actually, and starred in a film that it made for Channel 4, which aired on Channel 4 in 1995. It was called Blazed. We're going to see a clip of that a bit later on as well. So thank you, Michael, for joining us today. And lastly, at the end, is Lily Smith, who is a freelance musician, a youth worker, project manager, and works in artist development at Powerhouse Studios. Thank you for joining us, Lily. So let's start with Emma, I think. Let's open with you and just sort of ask what inspired you to write this book, really, and what do youth clubs represent in a city like Coventry?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I wasn't expecting to feel so strongly and frankly so emotional about the way that what we're doing here today was contextualised both by the Mayor and by Pauline Black. It isn't just a chapter, it is a cornerstone both of my book and of youth club life across these islands, across the UK and Northern Ireland. And I really feel the importance of it. I felt it when I came up to Coventry to meet people who are involved in youth work, and I'm feeling it now because it really matters. I know it matters personally because I attended youth club. I was also a youth worker, although an informal, untrained one on a youth-run magazine in Brixton for over 10 years in the 2000s up to the mid-2010s. So I know it on a felt level. But I really, with this book, just wanted to be able to make other people understand it understand that thing that we feel and know about it, and to be able to articulate why it matters. So my way of doing that was to try and write a cultural history that explained the impact, the almost invisible impact that youth clubs have had on music, sport, culture, and society. And that is especially evident in Coventry, partly because it's a small city, but also because the correlation between the youth club and the sound system is so evident here, and the two things supersized each other. You can't really have one without the other when you're talking about the impact on across all those areas that I'm speaking about. So, yeah, hopefully that gives you a sense of where I'm coming from.
And can you tell us a bit about the research that you did? Because I know you spent a lot of time here, didn't you, getting to know people in Coventry, beneficiaries. Was there anything that surprised you or that you were looking to get when you came here?
As I'm sure all of you will understand in a way that maybe people outside of the room wouldn't understand, finding out about Coventry's youth club histories was complicated because it's so rich, it's so personal, it's so deep. There is no one version of the story. And when I came up and met people, and a group of people very kindly convened for me by Emanuel, I began to get a sense of the entirety without really having a sense of what happened when. And the hardest thing for me was actually finding out the what happened when. So I got a great deal of information from people, but very personal histories, which actually really are somewhat different from what happened when. I was trying to apply a sort of almost like a linear version of time to a story that didn't conform to that, because so much different time was swirling around. The way I could describe it is that I just felt covered in dust. I needed to look at it in some other ways. So I went into the archive in terms of news reporting at the time, in terms of like finding youth service reports at the time, and then just did a lot of follow-up conversations with people. So I did gradually begin to put together a timeline of what happened when, but I realised that was less important than trying to convey the Herculean effort that went into making places like Holyhead happen, and the difficulty of what happens when something that you've built from scratch is essentially taken away from you. So I felt a great deal of joy, but I also felt a great deal of the hurt that happens when you've carved something out of, with great difficulty, you've generated so much, and often with much of the benefit not going back to you directly. So essentially I'm attempting a little bit of restoration with this.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate that. I mean, I think essentially what the outcome of this is that a lot of these stories are shared through oral histories, aren't they? So, you know, that's just as important to document that so that these stories are passed on. I know that Holyhead has such a huge legacy. You know, you walk through the town centre and you probably meet up with someone who's been through a youth club like that. Let's move on to Amos then, because Amos, you were a beneficiary of the Holyhead Youth Centre. Can you give us a sense, like, you know, going back to the early days, what made that place so special? You know, give us a sense of the backdrop at the time. What were young people facing and what made it so exciting?
Thank you for inviting me to this session. Yes, Holyhead Youth Club was very, very memorable, exciting in my days, that's in the 70s, and it is really the only one youth club in the 70s for the black youth at a time when racism was at its maximum, relationships between the youth and the police was at the lowest. These are challenges time for us. There were times when we couldn't, when I say we, the youths at that time, could not actually go into the nightclubs. We were refused so many times. Sometimes the night economies for young people at that time was very, very important, and we were denied that. But we had to fight hard for this. The only place for us at the time, the 70s, going back to the 3 generations, were to tackle it to make sure that our children and the future generation will not experience this issue again. So at times, for instance, you go to the nightclub and you're told, sorry, you can't come in. And you say, why? Oh, it's because you haven't got enough buttons on your shirt. Can you believe that? So, like a good, humble youth at that time, we'll rush back, change our clothes, just breaking the fire, and when we got to the front door, sorry, too much, that button is not right in the right place. And you say to yourself, no, this is not on. This went on for years, and of course, that created more tension in this precinct. We couldn't get into the nightclub, but we had to fight this. The Holyhead Youth Centre gave us the hope at that time, where we got together. It's like a little community, and it's the only club for the black youth, where the youths are traveling into that centre from all over the city. So obviously, that's a good place to meet. And I need to sort of say the conditions in that situation. We had no, although we started off with the £300 fund through the Cadbury Street donation, there weren't enough funding there because, like Pauline quite rightly mentioned, the buildings were damp. It's the youths that had to do the work themselves. The refurbishment, painting, that is a situation that we confronted. It was so bad, but one of the good memories that we shared is that we were united as youth against the challenges of the mainstream, the police, the nightclubs, and all we had to do was the youth club also developed the sound system, which is the only way that we can sort of enjoy ourselves. So can you just imagine when I say this story to my children and the grandchildren of today, what we will have to go through so that they don't go through that. The Holyhead Youth Club set the foundation note. I said, what shall I say? We laid the foundation for them to follow up. It is from there that we got the music, the Heart of 22 band originated. From the Heart of 22, we got came through this selector who went to make good things, and also to fight this situation about the black and white unite, to get that message across, and to the youths of Coventry as well.
Thank you, Amos. And I love that you're kind of painting this picture of a space that was really. I mean, Emma, you've done your research. It was described as commandeered by the young people in the city, really, the young West Indian youths who were the founding members of Holyhead, which is kind of what made it different, didn't it? Is that kind of spark, that raw energy of we need somewhere of our own. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one person told me that they commandeered the space, and another person said, basically, they squatted it. So the language that people used to describe what happened necessarily, or people had different ways of explaining what had happened. But as far as I can tell, the building was disused. Some people found their way in and made good of it. And like you're saying, you know, I found the information about this grant that you're talking about, which was to buy disco equipment, which is somewhat light years away from a sound system. But you've got to explain it in a way, even back then, that the funders would be prepared to fund. So it's lovely to hear you talking about things which I've also seen in the archive and bringing them to life in that way.
Yeah, and I would love to bring in Michael here, because Michael, I know you attended Yardley Street Youth Club, but you also attended Holyhead as well, so quite a few youth clubs.
That's right, yeah.
Your journey.
Again, thank you for inviting me here today. Yeah, Holyhead Youth Centre played a major part. Hillfield Young People Centre, again, a major part. There was another one, Pointers Youth Club was another one that we used to attend. And yeah, there's I can't think of enough to say for Holyhead Youth Centre. The foundation and the positive, what's the word I'm trying to say, the positive result that it had on young people like myself, you know, it speaks for itself.
Can you talk a bit about your experience at Yardley Street? Because that was quite instrumental for you, wasn't it? You were at this youth club where you made a film for Channel 4
right,
and
yeah.
had the starring role.
That's right, yeah. So the youth club that it was right in front of my house. So every time I opened my window, it was right there. So it was always there, always there. It was there. Maverick Television Company. They've come to Hillfields Young People Centre one day and was looking for young people to take part in Brighton and making this television drama. So we said, yeah, me being into drama from a young age from school, I jumped on it straight away. So we got together, got some of the young people together and started writing a script and coming up with the dialogue for the film.
And you've not done anything like that before? Or?
Other than being at school, being at stage, being involved in little drama groups like that, things like that. That was my first experience of working with a proper television production.
And how did that feel, you know, because obviously it's a Channel 4 broadcast, you know. What did that do for your confidence, you know, at the time?
We was always on stage anyway, so I'm not going to give myself a big head, but we was always a bit confident because we was into music and being on stage and in front of people.
Yeah.
So that gave me an extra boost, extra confidence, and, you know, it gave me more recognition within the city as well. And people recognised me for the talent of having drama and being involved in music, so that's what it did for me.
Yeah. And what's great about that film is that, I mean, it's still on YouTube if you want to have a look. We do have a clip of it that we can show, I think, which we can play, just a little short clip of your starring role in Blazed is the film.
That's the one.
While they try to get things lined up, can you just tell us what the premise of that film was? What was it about?
So it was just about young kids growing up, going to school, growing up within the community, you know, having community experiences and getting through their education system, trying to find their way in life and friends and family and what is the most important thing in life, you know, education, money, friends, family. And that's what it was based on, really, just trying to find, young people trying to find their way in life, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
were they working with you on the scripts? You know, was it youth-led? How?
Yeah, we all sat down together, you know, myself, Kelly Hayward, Ezra, as well as the people from the production team. And we all just sat down and we just improvised a lot, really, so that it would sound natural. We didn't want it to sound too forced. So we would speak how we would speak in that kind of situation, and then we would transfer that to paper, and we would continue that way. So the writing process of Blaze was quite nice and easy, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, do we have this clip? Yeah? Okay.
Hi, good morning, Coventry and Warwickshire. It's now 7 minutes to 8. Here's the latest travel. M69 has a contract.
Hi, I'm Chad George. Join me at drive time next week between 3 and 7 for more chances to win. Courtesy of Quinton Windows, I'll be giving you the chance to win a £1,000 gift voucher.
Complete news and information for Coventry.
Cars for everyone. Welcome to the Motor House.
I also wrote the soundtrack to it as well. Yeah.
On the board. Takes it back once. Kills past the second. Numbers a third just to go and see. Oh, what a goal! The crowd going mad. They cheer the new Liverpool £30 million signing. It's more like 30 pence signing. You better shut up. Three more jobs produced in association with the Coventry Job Centre. The first one is for early morning drivers working from 3 a.m. Good grief, to 6 a.m. So how come you never move with anybody? Did I? No.
Thank you so much for that. And round of applause, please. Well done, Michael.
Thank you.
What an amazing achievement.
Thank you.
To get Coventry on Channel 4 in 1995 is
Thank you.
amazing.
I'd also like to mention that I don't know if you remember the Tokalash.
Were you in that?
I was in the Tokalash as well.
Hello again.
Hello again.
You must have been very small.
I was very young at the time. Yeah.
No,
So yeah, that's my first time meeting Pauline Black.
Oh, amazing.
we acted on stage together.
That's right. Yeah.
Amazing. So all these legacies coming through, and the thread of that through Coventry's youth clubs, youth centres. Emma, what did you sort of discover with your research on Yardley Street and the impact it had in the community in Hillfields? Because I know that you said youth workers were quite instrumental to getting that off the ground, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So the story of Blazed appears in the book as well, mostly through me talking to A.D. Dowling, the filmmaker. And he told me about how he, as a young person, had benefited from youth clubs because he didn't have access to any filmmaking kit in his home life. He'd moved over from Ireland when he was quite young. That stuff wasn't available at home. So he got involved with the depot. He also had found school very challenging because it didn't really work for him, and yet he had all this skill and just no framework through which he could work. So he ended up at the depot, access to filmmaking material. He said it was cheap, he could get it, and then he ended up turning himself into an informal youth worker, getting himself down to the Yardley Streets and other similar youth clubs to go and work with the young people, and described to me how one of the ways that he did that was partly by bringing kit down to show people how to make films, but also by recognising that there were some turntables in the corner of the room that he could be using with the kids to be like DJing, so he was bringing down jungle records, hardcore records, and that he and the young people made a music video together which they entered for a competition, and it won the competition. And so that was, in his telling of the story, part of the way that the connection happened with Maverick, the film company, who'd previously made some programmes in Belfast and wanted to find, I think A.D. described it as a rough area, to come and make some more programmes in. And that was part of the reason why they ended up in Coventry.
Okay.
And so I got the sense of some of the other youth workers. Is it Abdul Sheikh? Abdul, I remember
That's
Abdul,
right,
yeah. That's right.
There was a name mentioned earlier. What's the lady's name?
Linda Ash.
Linda Ash.
Yeah.
Yeah, she played a massive part. She was massive.
And that so the youth workers did some of the background work, you might call it, which makes it possible for a film company with lots of equipment and catering trucks to come into an area which operates, perhaps you might say, with different rules. Or where different permissions need to be granted that don't go through official channels. And so he described to me the kind of background sort of negotiating work that went on through community figures who actually had a great deal of say about what happened on the streets, and the film company that were coming in, and some of the work that needed to happen to make that possible.
It's kind of building that trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is quite crucial when you can't, I know from a background in news, when you're just parachuting into areas, you can't, it's not something that is easily done. You have to do the groundwork and build trust. People need to know you, and especially when you're dealing with young people, so there's a duty of care there when you're dealing with that. Thank you so much, Emma and Michael. I'd love to just kind of bring Lily into this, because you have your finger on the pulse on what's going on right now, and I just, I've been to lots of events and things that you're involved in. I just wonder, what does a space that supports young people's creativity, what's it look like today?
That's a really good question. And thanks for having me here, guys, as well. I just want to say thanks, Amos, actually, for sharing what you said about your experience in the 70s. I think it's really important that we all remember that and carry it on, because history repeats and we don't want that to happen. But yeah, I want to give ode to Holyhead. Holyhead Youth Club sounds like a really fun place to be, and that legacy absolutely lives on to youth clubs and different places in Coventry today, and you can feel it. You can really feel that frying pan popping with the oil, and everything's going into that pan at the minute. So yeah, there are multiple different pockets, places to play in Coventry with youth provisions at the moment. And I want to give a shout out to YV. Actually, we've got some wonderful representatives actually there smiling because I've said them and waving. Hey guys. So YV is a youth club in Ball Hill, Barras Greenways, about 5 minutes walk from the Two-Tone Cafe Village, which I'm going to speak about in just a second as well. And at this youth club, it's really special because it's a creative youth club, it's a business youth club, it's a therapy youth club. There's lots going on here, and it is a safer space for people, particularly of African descent. So these guys over here, they lead a couple of different strands, including business. So I think at the minute, especially at YV, it's a space for young people, specifically young black people, to take reins of their own future. Like there's 15, 16-year-olds thinking about their own business that they're going to have. Now they're knowing about funding. We've actually got a group who are doing a performance are they doing the Albany Into the Woods, the Albany Theatre this year? They put on a really big performance each year. This year it's Into the Woods at the Albany. Last year it was Matilda. And typically Matilda is a very white show. But actually what they did, they brought in different dances. And it was just those like special little edges of different dances from African descent and African history that really made this space safer for black people. And I was very privileged to be a part of that as well. So not only YV, there are other spaces in Coventry, and I'm also lucky enough to work at Media Mania. The Daimler Powerhouse is a very special place. Dave's actually here today, Milsey, who's paved way for so many young people in Coventry. He's a friend to us all. And at Media Mania, it echoes what happened at Holyhead. In that basement, it's a place where music thrives. And people come in with different genres, different skills. Someone could come in, they don't know how to play an instrument. But in that space, we curate it safer to make people feel like they can express their true, authentic selves. So at the moment, what we're seeing is these people coming in from different backgrounds. Like, it's beautiful, really, and they come together to make a cover of a song, to produce a track together. We've got a screamer who's a metalhead alongside a rapper. And I think, for me, at the minute, that is the new sound of Coventry. And we've got a lot of young people putting on gigs like Soul the other night with Jasmine. It was wonderful. We had a great time. Unify and Prosper with Serena Jasmine, another young person. And she puts on gigs at the Two-Tone Village. And she uses that space to support Palestine. She does free Palestine gigs there, which is a really important space. So essentially what I'm trying to say is there are many safer spaces in Coventry, and I think we all just need to be mindful about keeping connected, because it's easy to lose each other in this crazy world at the moment. But yeah, there are pockets of beauty around Coventry, and if you want to know more about them, we can point you out to different representatives in the room.
Oh, thank you very much, Lily. That was amazing. Thank you. I've got to say, I've been to the Two-Tone, the Free Palestine gig that Lily was talking about. It's amazing. And I think one thing we don't do enough of in Coventry is shouting about what we do with confidence. There is a new confidence here, definitely, but we need to do more of that because there's so much happening. And it's very much youth-led, youth-driven. So Lily, you spoke a little bit about that ownership, that sense of ownership that, these young people today are leading with. But Amos, I know that with Holyhead, what was quite unique to that story is it was sort of founded by members. And I wonder, when you came on board, was it mid-70s? Did you get a sense of how that ownership shaped the culture or spirit of the club?
Yes, absolutely. One of the challenges that we had at the time, like I mentioned earlier, was the need to bring that equality for that the youth can have opportunities. And what really came out that opportunity is what speaks for itself right now. The emergence of the musical two-tone music, the selector and the special, that drawn in that message of unity for black and white, to draw again for our youth as well. So the integration came out of that. Now, following that as a legacy, that puts Coventry into the map. Not only that, what's actually emerged, and the young people, like Michael, my sons over there, benefited from, is the need for the education. Out of that followed the legacy of the two tones was the Glasshouse Music Industry Training Center, accredited training center, because there was a need for that purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to finish with that. Say that those needs is the very first time that music technology, for instance, were introduced. Coventry made that happen, and that benefited a lot of the youth of my kids, the generation, the amount of youth that come through that the training center. The first time music has been done and introduced at national level, through university, even this university, for instance, Coventry University, when they decided to set up their music technology course. At that time, Glasshouse was nationally, as part of the music industry body, had to do an external review for that course to ensure that it meets the industry standards. And that's one of the benefits of Holyhead.
Yeah, and thank you, Amos. Emma, I know that you've done a lot of work in sort of trying to unravel the whole ownership story and the story of how it got taken over by the council. And, you know, in the book you described Holyhead as a story of creative resistance, which really was kind of around the founding members who kind of pulled this together, one of them being my dad, I should probably say, Louis. But I just wondered if you can sort of just expand on that. What did you mean by a creative resistance?
What do I mean by creative resistance? I mean, it's very evident in the Holyhead, but it's also evident in the story of Yardley Street, and I think it's evident in all the culturally powerful youth clubs that exist across the whole country. Creative resistance is making space where it's not offered to you, but taking it anyway and sticking with it and making it work even though all the systems of accountability encourage the opposite. And what really strikes me is that, particularly in a culture where things need to be evidenced to be considered valuable, almost everything in the youth club can't be evidenced. Because if you want to know the value of the Holyhead, imagine if you tried to apply an evaluation to it after 6 months or 6 weeks. You know, so many youth projects are like, 6 weeks, 13 weeks, wow, it's not enough. You try and evaluate these things too soon, you can't tell, because the impact is generational, the impact takes decades. I have this idea that youth work, like parenting, operates at a time lag. And so none of the systems we have can show why it is valuable, which is one of the reasons why it seems to be so hard to fund. So the creative resistance of recognising that the systems are not going to allow it to happen and doing it anyway is work that people have undertaken whenever they've needed to, and we wish that they didn't have to, but they have. And so I'm extremely grateful to the people that did it in the past in the Holyhead. The actual story of the ownership and how it worked is very convoluted, but at every single moment, creative resistance occurred, even in painful moments where the youth-run system was replaced with a management committee, which was comprised of 2 of the neighbours who had led the campaign to get it closed. The police, the magistrates, all the people who didn't really want it to exist were put in charge. And in a way, you can see arguments that it needed to happen to formalise it, but then also you have all the forces that have made the whole thing necessary suddenly in charge of an extremely powerful space. So you see this repeatedly through the youth club histories, but just in very, very clear way through the Holyhead. So all of that to say, youth workers are some of the best people in the world. Young people are also their own youth workers, and anyone who makes this stuff happen, whether it's in the past or now, are just some of the most important people in our society, and we should be extremely grateful all the time.
And just... I just wondered, I know you've explored this in your book quite in detail. Have there been other cases or other examples that you came across that were similar to that, where maybe it worked with the balance between youth-led and council worked or didn't work?
Partly, I mean, what you're making me think of straight away is that ley line between Coventry and Northern Ireland, or a ley line that I intuit anyway. There's a lot of chapters, another cornerstone actually, about youth work in Northern Ireland, both pre-Troubles, during the Troubles, and then kind of in the years after the Good Friday Agreement, so more like 2000s. And again, you see very, very similar kind of situation happening where some people in particular are having to create their own youth provision because, in the words of someone who, when they were 15, started their own youth club in their rural village, which would have been described as culturally Catholic, we knew no one was going to do it for us. So that DIY attitude is also present in other areas. So I saw that very frequently in the youth clubs which I explored in the north of Ireland or Northern Ireland. There are multiple words that you can use, take your pick, to describe that location. So yeah, I think that's another example.
And young people know what they want, right? They know better than all of us, any of us, what they want.
They do, but in a way it's a pressure to put it onto young people to say, what do you want? Because often the question, what do you want, requires understanding what's possible. Yeah. There's a youth club in Bristol which was very influential in the formation of drum and bass. Ronnie Size came through it, and then when he won the Mercury Prize, gave the whole winnings back to the basement in Bristol. And he made exactly that point. They asked us what we wanted, but we didn't know. We didn't know what was available, so we were like, some music? And then, by having an adult who understood what was available, suddenly it becomes possible. So you need young people, but you do also need adults who know what's possible to help make parts of the world visible that just aren't visible when you're 14 or 15.
Yeah. It's interesting, just last week there was an awards show, the Independent Music Awards, where Ezra Collective took award for Best Independent Track, and Femi, who's the band leader, spoke and praised youth clubs, particularly the Roundhouse Youth Club, for its programme and seeing 10,000 people through its doors. So this is the kind of infrastructure you're kind of talking about, really, the support to empower young people to do what they want to do or need to do to express themselves, Michael, I just wonder, without Yardley Street, without Holyhead, what would that loss have been like for you in your life as a child?
I think that would just created a massive hole, a massive abyss of nothingness for the youth to do. So, that youth club being there filled that hole and gives them activity and purpose and drive and focus. And you need that.
Was there anything else for you to do? Without those clubs, what would your life have looked like?
I mean, where I grew up, I grew up in Hillfields, in the heart of the crime. So I was surrounded by a lot of what could have been negative influences. So, without that youth, club being there, I'd have been more susceptible to the negative side of my community that I was in. Yeah. But that youth club there, it pulled me to that side. So, yeah.
And what opportunities did the Blazed film lead to? What did you go on to do from that?
After Blazed, I attended drama. I went to drama school for a bit in Birmingham, the Custard Factory. Oh, yeah. And one of the women that was in my group, she actually, I'd seen her on television, doing an advert, and I was like, I was in the same class as her. So yeah, I did go on to do a few things and involved in a few other community projects to do with drama and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Lily, from your experience, how can sort of creative spaces give young people real ownership? While still supporting them, that balance that Emma's talking about. What do you, from your experience, because you're doing that now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're really lucky at the moment for there to be so many funding pots to support creative spaces. I think we're seeing that a lot at the moment for both the individual and for the collectives. So, for example, where I work at Media Mania, our whole ethos is supporting young people to get into the creative industries, because that's where it is at for young people. A lot of people are now realising, like you were saying, Emma, are starting to realise the possibilities of where they can be in the future. I mean, when I was young, I was told to get a 9 to 5, get an office job, and then play on the weekend. I did that for a little bit. I hated it. And then I started volunteering. I went from a lovely job in the NHS to volunteering as a guitar teacher at Media Mania. And I was still a young person at that stage. But that opportunity just to be there, to be myself and do something that I love with other people that were doing things that they love was just that pocket for me to grow. And over the past 3 years, that's given me the impetus, the catalyst, and the experience to be where I am today. So in these spaces, that's what we do for the young people. We nurture these spaces, we make sure that they are safer for people to grow their creativity. But that's the crux of it, really, isn't it? Creativity. We always come back to that. It doesn't matter what we do in our day. We always want to come back and we want to listen to music, we want to cook, we want to build, we want to create, we want to make something. And I think these pockets are places in Coventry for creatives are the safest spaces that I've been in personally, and that I've experienced, because that's where we can be ourselves. That's where we try to hold a judgment-free zone. But yeah, like I said, there are many of these pockets in Coventry. PYF, and they're doing it.
Positive Youth Foundation.
Positive Youth Foundation. They're doing it with the Change in Tracks. CBGC are doing it with the MAC project. And it's interesting that a lot of the youth clubs now, we're not centred on being a youth club, we're centred on the project that is at that youth club. So whether that's sport, whether that's music, whether that's cooking, whether that's doing a performance, that's that's the focal point now. So coming into the youth provision with, I guess, an idea in mind, a way that you want to shape your own future in mind, a way that you want to grow. And to me, that's what youth clubs are these days. It's a place to really propel yourself for your future, for your own creativity. And we're not short of that in Coventry. We're not.
I just wondered, let's talk about the sort of impact of, the impact of youth clubs, because I know that, like Emma, you were saying, it's really hard to measure that, in evidence. But how do you know when a youth club is really making a difference? How do we?
I would actually step away from the question and instead trust that it works, because we can see across time and space that creating space for young people is an essentially valuable thing to do. And in this country, we have the idea of the youth club, which obviously is different. It's different now than it was even 10 or 15 years ago. Other countries might have like grassroots. In France, they have these grassroots conservatoires. Other places have other ways of kind of catering towards the youth. So rather than saying, how do we know it works? I would prefer a basic assumption that we know it works and ensuring that there are spaces for young people to go, staffed by adults who do the job of the youth worker, and operate from a position of just basically understanding that it's important rather than forcing it to always have to prove itself.
And if funding is scarce, which sorry, Amos, did you want to say?
I just wanted to sort of have a bit of impact on the youth, positive youth space today, and the impact of social media on the effects that it has on the youths of today as compared to our generation when there was no social media. So the problem with the social media impact is that the younger people today are more engaged with, talking to their tablets or phone, haven't got that skills of mixing, going out. I'm just wondering whether, Emma, in terms of that, how would you address that?
Yeah. Well, my view is just it's not either or. The digital world exists, but so does the physical world. We are well catered for in the digital world. There is plenty of investment on using keeping our attention in the digital world. Some of that is great for connection, and in some cases, people are spending huge amounts of money on creating more division. So the digital world has plenty in it. What about the physical world? What about buildings? What about the street? What about the places that we walk up and down between place A and place B? That is not being well attended to. That is not being well invested in. So the digital world exists. The physical world exists. One, I feel, is not being invested in properly.
Right. Which says it comes back to the same thing in nowadays, lack of funding.
Yes.
It's the key thing, isn't it?
Exactly, and that lack of funding, the lack of resources. If resources are scarce then, or funding is scarce, what other kinds of ways can we support young people to have these creative spaces? You know, is it people, is it spaces, is it skills, is it partnerships? Do we need to be doing more of that? What is it? Does anyone, I'll open that out to the floor then.
I think for me, it's physical spaces at the moment. I think there's a really good connection in Coventry, but having those physical spaces that can be safe, I think it's really important that we have those and we have more of those at the moment. And in these spaces, that's where the magic happens. So, for example, CGBC at the moment has housed young musicians. They're a little bit older now, they're in their early 20s, and they've formed a music collective called Mafia, MAPHIA. But without that place, that wouldn't have happened. We've now since moved to somebody's house, and that's kind of like our ground of creativity now. But yeah, for me, venues and spaces, I think we should protect them. Yeah, I can't see them to be gone, because where would we go?
Thanks, Lily. Does anyone else have a different opinion on that? Emma, you?
Well, the thing that occurred to me is the Holyhead building is still there, right? It was brought into life by a group of around 20 very determined individuals who did all the work on making it happen. And it was used for a long time. In the early 90s, the council told the people who were in there that the building was not fit for purpose and that they had to move. And so everybody had to move out, and they were sent off to other very, very substandard buildings. And when you look back at the council minutes, what you see that actually happened was that the building was handed over to the Property Management Committee. It was just a way of the building being moved somewhere else where potentially it could have been profitised on. But what's actually happened is that it's now being used by a company to do free or affordable artist studios. But the basement, where Jarbadis were, where the youth club activity happened, is still there. The like graffiti on the wall from the music workshop from the 80s era is still there. The space is still there. So why are the people who run that building not inviting a youth club to take place now? The building was built by the youth club. Now it's being used for another purpose. But what you require is someone with a bit of structural power to say, you know what? A youth club should happen here. And who knows what that would do?
Can I just add one thing to what you say? The importance of mentoring. It's very, very important that today's space have mentor for people who's been there before, to mentor some of the kids of today, and putting them into the right direction, rather than going to fight against crimes and killing each other, or we can give them the right advice.
Can I get you to speak into the microphone? Sorry. Can you speak into the microphone? Sorry, just closer to the mic.
Sorry.
Sorry, just speak into the microphone a bit more.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, you couldn't hear me. Yeah, it's very, very important for the mentoring aspect, because young people of today need guidance. At the end of the day, it's their world. They need to have the direction to be pointed. Like what Emma said, if there was included in the program an investment is made, bringing in people of past of experience who's been through, like people from the Holyhead and the others, can help point young people in the right direction and minimize this killing of each, there's too much violence among each other nowadays. So that mentality, that history is needed. And I think that's something that can be taken on board.
Yeah. I just wonder, Emma, as we kind of wrap up about your book and the work you've done here, what is it that you want people to take away from the book? What do you want them to learn or see for themselves?
Well, I think the youth club is full of very lively sparks. The youth club is a funny place. The youth club is a creative place. The youth club is potentially a joyful place. The youth club is a contested place, but it's certainly lively. And what I hope is that some of those sparks, which I have tried to collect and put in this book, can just be released, remind people that this is valuable, important, creative, lively, a battering ram against division, as Pauline, as you said in the beginning. And for people to do with that spark what they can. Some of us have little bits of power here and there. We might have cultural power, we might have a bit of structural power. And if we get livened up by that spark, then we can do something with it. I don't know what that will be. But I hope people take that spark and run with it in the way that suits them in their environment, in their community. And who knows, off the back of it, we might have some more sparks being generated for the next lot.
Yeah. And do you, in terms of hope and what it looks like in the future, what does it look like? I mean, do we know, do we have any, especially with the digital world, as Amos has brought into this, can these structures look different? Do they look different? Lily, you might have some thoughts on that, because retaining the attention of young people when you've got the digital technology distractions, how do you keep them engaged? You know?
Great question. Great question. I did want to quickly shed light on something Emma just spoke about, actually, about the structural power and having the structural knowledge to get into those spaces. But yeah, I think another thing that I did want to shed light on is that we need more young people in managerial spaces, because that knowledge needs to be passed down. And I think there is a little bit of a glass ceiling at the minute of maybe gatekeepership, or maybe there's just a disconnect there of young people having that knowledge of the structures in the council and the government to walk their way up and to know where they can be. But anyway, going back to the social media question, yeah, it's a good question. I think what we try and do sometimes in the youth club is centre the focus on the present right now. And specifically at Media Mania, they don't go on their phones, which is really lucky. But then as soon as they leave the building, that is something that people are going to straight away do. They're going to post, they're going to go on their phone. And I think at the moment, we're all subject to the algorithm that is happening at the moment. So what we see on our phones is what we want to see, essentially. And I think that does posit a danger of us going into different silos. So what I'm going to see on my phone is going to be queer spaces, live gigs, musicians, and I'm going to say, there's so much for me here. Your phone's going to say something completely different. And I think we need to be aware as a community that we're seeing what the algorithm wants us to see. And I think there's a potential danger of a disconnect here. So perhaps there's a movement at some point for us to all come together and try and get away from this digital algorithm, because I think it could have the preset to push us away, to put us into those different silos and not allow us to connect anymore.
I would just also say, when we're talking about young people and their phones, we should be remembering basically that, like, parents and their adults are on their phones for at least 5 hours a day. So we shouldn't just be thinking this is just like young people and their phones problem. This is like everybody and their phones problem.
Yeah, good point. Thank you so much. I just wonder if we've got any questions from people who are here. I know, yes.
Not a question, just a comment, first of all, a couple of comments. One of the things about the Holyhead, that's back in my day as well.
So
one of the things I think...
Sorry, we're going to get a microphone to you right here. Just so everyone can hear.
Just by way of remembering why the Holyhead happened, why it was important, why it was this cultural movement, was that early 70s we were the first generation that either came here very young or was born here. We felt the disconnect between our own communities and the white communities. We were people who belonged nowhere. The Holyhead was massively important because it allowed young people who actually, because it was the time of Rasta was just happening, people were seeing that, families are breaking up, all the rest of it. That's part of why the Holyhead was so like a magnet for a lot of young people, because it was a space where you could go and you could have your identity as not quite Caribbean or fully Caribbean, but not English either. And it allowed you to play with and understand and talk about what racism and discrimination was, because actually our family didn't want to know that. We had parents who you weren't allowed to talk back to your teacher. Your teacher could do what you liked with you, the police could do what they liked. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it's important to remember that was part of the context of why the Holyhead was really important. And another comment, just in terms as an ex-youth worker, part of, it's great that we've got all of these cultural spaces, but for me, the power of youth clubs was actually, it allows a space for young people to just be. Whether you're creative, whether you're not, it allows you to just be. And very often it was that space where people could be away from family, could be away from homework, could be away from everything, do you know? It was just a space to be. So while I see that it's important to have youth clubs that are project focused, that are arts focused, that are whatever focused, I think it's important to remember that actually in this digital age, in this age where people are on their phones and they're in their little silos, that actually part of the power of the youth club is it just allows young people to come and be and to mix with their peers. And when we're forever looking for these outcomes that at the end of the day, you know, are 100 years hence. You know, I know that a lot of the kids that came to my youth club, they actually didn't get, lots of them went on to music, they went on to whatever they did. But the power of being in my youth club, I think, was that they could just be. They could just meet up, they could be, they could share experiences. So I just wanted to make those as kind of like comments about youth clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we come to you guys at some point as well, some young people and some other hands up here as well. We're going to make our way, but we're going to come over to you as well. It's great to hear from you. Yes.
Firstly, apologies because I missed some of the start. I apologise. But I guess in terms of the sort of the recording of this kind of history, and I'm very interested into how, in recording this history, there wasn't a intrinsic sterilisation of this history, because what a lot of youth clubs were about, and I've had this for extensive conversations with Gus John, is that they were actually anti-respectability politics. They were these radical sites, and I'm concerned because I heard a few things from the panel about potentially managerial roles, and there's this constant, and then one of the questions was, how do we measure impact? There seems to basically be this idea where we're continually having to defend and attribute our presence to our value and what we're able to actually contribute to wider society. And by picking out these really successful examples, how are we not feeding into that sort of capitalistic respectability tendency of legitimising ordinary blackness, black resistance, black rebellion, in sterilising it into this really kind of understanding blackness in proximity to whiteness?
Yeah, that's a really important point. I would like to say probably three things about that immediately. One is, in my work, I'm constantly trying to navigate my own whiteness and to recognise how my own whiteness plays into areas that I'm often talking about, where people are not walking through the world with whiteness in the ways that the structural effects of not walking through the world with whiteness. So I'm aware of it, and I try and navigate that myself, both personally and explicitly as well in the writing and also in the way that I talk about it. Secondly is about sterilisation of spaces. Now this is tricky because what I tried to do was to bring to life places that no longer exist, or a moment in time that no longer exists in the time-space continuum, and to retell it in a way that would be recognisable to people who were there, but also allowed it to be accessible to people who weren't. And the way that I did that was by trying to work very transparently. So everybody who's in the book was sent their section, and sometimes longer sections, not for copy approval, but so they could tell me if I'd made any errors of nuance, or if there are things that I should think about, or if there was something we should discuss. So there was a long process of to and fro with the people in the book. Also, you mentioned Gus John. He also appears in the book because he wrote extensively about youth clubs. So his work is represented, but also we spoke to each other, and he told me now what he thinks about some of the things that happened in the youth club. So we had the incredible benefit of him in 1981 heading up a youth and race project for the National Association of Youth Clubs and writing about it and visiting many of the youth clubs in the UK, including the Holyhead, and writing about it. And him now reflecting back on the way that the youth club is an example of how this country has not reckoned with its histories of empire and refuses to, and the youth club is both a way which it is reckoned with and has been reckoned with, and then the state response to the youth club is also a part of that echo, a refusal to recognise the echo of empire. So it's really good that you're asking this question. This question is so relevant right now, and I hope this question powers a lot of the work that continues to happen in the youth club space. And hopefully, to the best of my ability, with my remove from some of these histories and my remove and my proximity, have told the story in the way that I can, with the limits that are inherent in that as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Emma. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yeah. Next, one over here.
Thank you. Thank you. Just want to say thank you to the panel for what has been a fascinating conversation, and props and respect to Emma for locking down our stories. So I was involved in youth work, both in terms of clubs and wider youth provision from the late 1980s as a young person up until about 2002. And I saw, through a lived experience, the transformational impact on young people like myself and those that I'm working with, carving a career in, I worked in music, film and theatre, carving a career in film, music and theatre, which was invisible or non-accessible to these young people, because in formal education that wasn't an option. So we're working with young people on crack cocaine, burning cars, and actually losing lives, not only to drugs or gangs, but also suicide. So I'm part of that sort of history of young people who didn't see much. I had parents who were involved in the arts and cultural sector, but also they were activists themselves, so I saw some light. But the fundamental impact of youth provision was incredible for young people growing up in the 80s and the 90s, because it was less bureaucratic, more DIY. We had more of a say in the decision-making process back then. So I saw that, but I also saw youth resistance, youth resilience and youth activism on our own terms. We weren't prescribed what we were told to do. We did what we had to do to survive. So to us, youth provision, youth clubs, art, culture were our tools of resistance and resilience. And I have seen young people from that era carve out careers that they've gone beyond Coventry. I was born and bred in Coventry, but I've worked across the country, that went on to having national, international careers. Just like Punjabi MC, he came from Coventry, but one of the sort of foundations for people like myself and A.D. Dowling and others, and Colin Ballon, all sorts of other people in the city, carved our career paths within the Depot Studios. So people like Punjabi MC came through the Depot Studios, playing at festivals there, and he just exploded across the world. People like Kendall Smith, who came into my school in the late 1980s, but he carved a career out in the Depot Studios and went on to having incredible success with Stereo Nation. The point here is this, that we were given agency. And so what we've seen over the last 15 years is a cull of that agency through just eradicating youth provision, be it clubs, be it institute or organisations or the Depot Studios. So it's young people are finding another way. We always have the resilience and resistance. We'll find another way, be it digital communications, be it TikTok, be it something else. We just got to give props and respect to young people's agency, that they will always find a way. That's not a problem. But there is an issue in where we were and where we are, and it's great to see that there's some great projects happening in the city, but I'm not sure where the power sits within that infrastructure, because I don't work in youth work anymore. So that, to me, is very fascinating. But I'm really looking forward to reading your book. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Emma, do you want to respond to that?
I think the thing is that it's a really good reminder. Young people are always going to find a way, and it will happen anyway. But it would be good if the adults, especially those with structural power, were saying, what do we owe the young people, and how are we going to fulfil what we owe them? By offering space or some mentoring or some guidance if it's useful. So I think that question of what we owe young people is a really important one. But yeah, people are always going to find a way.
Thank you. And just on agency, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but can we have like a little... sorry, do you have your microphone? Do any of you want to kind of give us a sense, or any of you here want to give a sense of what you do, where you go for creative spaces? I know just one of these lads here, or anyone want to share with us?
On the spot.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. So I'm 17, so yeah, quite young. With YV, where I am now, it's really close to my house. So it was, at first, I was invited there by a couple of my friends for a revision during when I was in year 10, I think it was. And it was a really nice place to just go there for quiet, even if there wasn't something that I was there to do specifically, just somewhere to, leave the house and go to. And then as my brother got older, he joined there as well. And as for me, I'm not so much as a creative person, but I know my brother, he definitely is. He'd love to come there just to take a laptop, get a picture up, start drawing, start sketching. In fact, as of right now, as Lily said with the Into the Woods play, he's now one of the main roles there, and being part of the play and that, and I know he's enjoying it. He's exploring into his acting, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's how you say it, but yeah, he's exploring that side of him. And I feel like without YV, that's something that he may never have, tried to explore. So, yeah, I feel like youth clubs as a whole with their creative side, even if you don't fall into that creative category like me, there are other people around you, like my brother, who will fall into it, and who, even you just being there, it'll make them feel more comfortable for them to come and try and see what it is you're doing and then find something else for themselves that they may enjoy. So while I was there, again with Revision Hub, I loved it there. Came there just to do nothing really. And then I was like, yeah, this is somewhere where I one day want to work and try to give back to the youth. And now I'm working here and I really enjoy it.
Amazing. Lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. So I'm Helmut and I'm also an executive at YB. And one thing about youth work, I feel like, is the idea that youth work has been taken and sort of adapted by the various different people that are taking it on. So for example, with YV, it's a leadership program. So helping young people get into sort of leadership roles and taking, taking ownership of the things that they're doing. But specifically ours might be something different. So for example, by helping them start their own businesses, etc. Whereas going back to Lily and Media Mania has our more creative stuff. So I think what could be better about Youth Club is sort of more collaborations, definitely. Because as, sorry, I really don't know your name, but you were mentioning something about how you should let youth be. And them being in spaces where they're able to be and collaborating with other places are going to be able to be themselves, not in a limited way, but going into different places, joining different youth organizations where they're exploring themselves in different ways is just going to benefit them in fulfilling their youthness in a sense, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Some more collaboration with other organisations that do different things, so you can explore who you want to be.
So my name is Dante, and I'm also a YV executive. I'm 23. So how I got into Youth Vision quite shortly was during lockdown, when we didn't really have much to do, essentially. But then one lady who's close to my mom had passed my details on to another lady called Cristobal, and we basically had online sessions going from there, which then resulted in a project we did, which was a non-budget documentary, which then was tackling different things based on COVID, homophobia, sexism, racism, and more controversial topics, which then got quite a lot of attention from different groups as well as counsellors as well. So in my experience, it was something where I saw it as a great opportunity for me to come out of my comfort zone and essentially being able to grow. So I decided to continue on with it. And I would say the one thing that really stands out for me is that mentoring aspects, which you mentioned earlier, because I find that when I do describe this sort of job to people, they find it really rare and surprising, someone my age is doing something alongside this mentoring aspect for young people. And even for me, when hearing that, usually seems surprising because it makes me realize that a lot of young people, whether my age or like 18 and above, it's not really a common thing. And I feel that would be very helpful because, especially when it comes to that adult perspective, and as you were saying about like what do the youth want, but then it's like to have the adults that can like give that answer to make it easier to answer. But then to say someone my age who's been in the same shoes and then like things that whether I enjoy, so even with Lily saying with the whole music creatives, it's like when the youth have someone they can relate to in a similar age and having that mentor to guide them, it's something that can be honestly really touching. And for me, I find it really amazing to be able to do that for young people. So it's like, I never really imagined myself doing something like this, but I truly am grateful. And as you said, if we had more mentors in the sense of like similar age, it can really help with like creating that relatability and trustworthiness to like share, not being judged, and just overall being able to have like people who can just help you in the sense of like how they were helped. So that's my experience and how I believe youth clubs have really played like a big impact essentially. So yeah.
I'd just like to, I would just like to just drop a little mention to some of the younger members of my family have started doing their own youth work through the title ARCA, A-R-C-C-A. And they have this phrase of relatable role models, which is exactly what you're talking about. And I think articulation of like the language of what we're asking for can be really useful. And for me, the idea of relatable role models was like, wow, that's exactly it. So yeah, from ARCA through me back to you to reflect back what you said in another way.
Thank you. I'd also like to say I think social media has put the young people today up front. The young people of today are becoming the youth leader of their own generation. So you know they're ahead of the game. This generation is ahead of the game, especially when it comes to the digital side of things. This generation is ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, there'll definitely be some major influences for young people.
Thank you. I mean, it's empowering, isn't it? It's empowering. They're empowering themselves, but also what I'm hearing is that you know, finding people who you can relate to is not easy. You know, that it's a skill. It's a quality that you have. I mean, I think Lily does it very well. You know, she really relates to the people that you work with. You know, there's that connection there, and I think there's maybe some training that's needed, or because I know you spoke about the gatekeeping aspect of this thing. Maybe it's about empowering people to hand over the power or the leadership skills so that young people can, you know, it's passing the baton on. You know, that's what's needed. Any more questions? Yes, thank you.
Hi, Emma. I wanted to ask you if in any of those community centres you found provision for students that come from other cities, if they're coming and using the youth club in the cities where they are. Because actually I'm one of the people that get very lucky, and my youth work is actually my main paid job. So I have been hired at BCU, Birmingham City University, to be a learner developer and Thrive tutor for law. And I find a lot of students that come from London, Manchester, Belfast even, and they have no one and nowhere to go. And they're really lost, and they come to me, which is fantastic. So I get to spend a lot of time with these young people. And I find that, for example, I have one lad who was doing Crystal Palace, and he turned 18, realized that he aged out, couldn't do Crystal Palace anymore, came to study law with business. And he didn't have anywhere to go after, you know, being in the halls of residency, finishing his 9 hours a week of lessons, and then going home. So I wonder if you found anything like that.
It's a very useful question. The short answer is no. But it's very encouraging to me that universities like yours, and also I know this is happening here, that you have people who are making it their business to go and work with the youth clubs and to create those kind of connections. But I think what you're saying is also making me think about the issue of connection in general. For people who are kind of, you know, in their teens or early 20s now, have suffered a great deal of circumstances that have caused a lack of connection. And so there's work, we have to recognise that it's maybe more difficult for people of that generation to connect or to feel comfortable being around people they don't know, or to just know that it's normal to be able to meet new people. So these spaces become extra important at a time where a lot of that connection has become more awkward or more difficult for people. So my book also finishes in 2010. So it doesn't really deal with now, apart from showing evidence to prove what a terrible idea it was to cut 75% of youth clubs and make thousands of youth workers redundant. So I'm just very grateful that this work is happening somewhere, and I hope it happens in other places too.
So the issue we'll be talking about is funding, support, and today's youth clubs or spaces need that extra funding. This is one of the barriers that's probably facing, and I still come back to the point I said earlier on, come back to the first thing for the Holyhead thing when we saw it way in advance, that it's important to have a role model in the community so that the young people of today can emulate or follow that sort of role model. And it's also important to draw on past experience to guide these young people into the right direction, and that takes funding. And that's where partnership between the local authorities or whoever is controlling this funding the case needs to be put forward that it's worthwhile investing in young people. And that power of mentoring is so important in the young people's life because it can make a difference to where you can be tomorrow rather than you following the whole way, getting in trouble with the police, or, you can change your life but through good, powerful mentoring, giving the advice, the direction to take to make your life possible.
Well, today's 12-year-olds will be the 16-year-olds who will vote with the new changes to the voting age. So you might find that the politicians at a local politics level or a national politics level might suddenly find that it's within their interest to support young people because they are the voters.
Yeah, good point. It's interesting, just speaking to that point about funding, I just wonder if there's any innovative ways that we could be looking at to source funding in any other way. Is that a discussion that you kind of came up in your research? Just other ways of funding these youth clubs, or?
My focus is much more on the DIY grassroots, how people have just made it happen anyway. That seems to be what I've ended up writing about a great deal. There are other ways. I only have one perspective or one set of versions, so I couldn't really speak to that. But I know that people can do a great deal with not much money. And when you have private care homes spending £318,000 or charging hundreds of thousands of pounds each year for any young person that's within the quote-unquote care system, and you think about how could you just be diverting some of that money, so rather than shareholders making loads of money out of things like the care system, how is that some of that money being diverted actually to the grassroots where it goes a very, 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 very long way?
And I think we've got time for one more question.
Question is, obviously back in 2010 and now, what is the next step when the young person grows out of their youth club limit of age?
What's the next step after youth club?
Yeah, after youth club, when the young person has overgrown the limit of being a youth club.
My short answer to that would be youth work.
So giving back?
You can stay in the youth club by doing the youth work.
Yeah.
Well, the next step that I would probably think is, the career in life, where you move to. That should be, and that's again come back to the point I made earlier on, the mentoring sort of side, which can actually direct you. I mean, there's a lot of young people that I've come across, for instance, who have turned their life round to making a better thing so that they themselves can create a role model for the others and contribute to the society. So the next path will be really, where do you take your career? Where do you want to be? And how can you achieve that? You can only get that through experience in life or pure good guidance. And I think it's important that we should really focus and work with other partners. You're talking about how well can you develop funding issue. I've got one or two suggestions here. You probably might want to consider to develop some sort of a joint funding application. It's one direction. Social enterprise income generation, which you as a social youth club will need that sort of support. Encouraging sponsorship from the big people. I mean, look at Stormzy.
Yes.
There are people within the music industry, there's people who's got enough money that can actually channel. So you need to look beyond that aspect. How can they come in and have an input to support? It's not just the local authority alone, but the road is there. You just got to think outside the box, like what we had to do in our days of the 70s. You have to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And if I can say, one of the things I'm proud of in the 70s that came out from Coventry is the development of, which set the footstep as to where to go. And it's for you to sort of take it on board. But you need people like us or people who's got experience in that to work with the youth and also the local authority to fund that.
Thank you, Amos, thank you. And I just want to
Can I say one little thing about that? I think it's a really important question, actually, Jeffrey, about that exit strategy, what happens to the youth after they're in their youth club. And to echo what both these guys just said, yes, youth work, and yes, into mentorship, great. But also, if I could say one thing to a young person who's getting out of the 25-year-old range, is to just say yes to every opportunity that comes forward. Even if it's a gig, you might not really like that type of music, but you could go to that gig and meet someone special, and 2 years later, they can offer you an opportunity if they see you again. And I think that's happened to me multiple times, and it's happened to my friends a lot. So if I was to give any advice to a young person, around 20 to 25, just say yes to the opportunities that come in Cov, because generally we're pretty good people and we want to help out each other. Say yes to the opportunities.
Lovely, thank you so much, Lily. And if I could just leave a final word with Emma, is there a final thought that you'd just like to leave with everyone here after hearing the thoughts and the experiences that have kind of, they've fleshed out what you've been exploring?
So what I would say is, in short, Coventry is amazing. To be here at an event organised by Fyah Kamp, who are really part of a living lineage of youth work in this city, feels to me very resonant, feels to me very powerful. And so what happens here is remarkable, what happens here is visible, what happens here is still happening despite all the odds, and what happens next will be built on the work that's happening today.
Thank you so much, Emma. I just want to say thank you to all of the panellists. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of the panellists and to Emma for your trip here as well and talking to us, for spending time with us. And please do check out Emma's book today. I'm going to, because you mentioned Fyah Kamp, in a moment, invite Ruben up onto stage. We're going to hear from Ruben, who's the director of Fyah Kamp, who's doing amazing things in this city. But yeah, just for now, just thank you so much, all of you, and to everyone for your questions and thoughts. It's been amazing. Thank you. Ruben is the director of Fyah Kamp, who has been hard at work putting on the 4-day festival.
Really and truly, it's been an affirmation of what this festival is set out to do, in the sense of supporting young people, and in the sense of the infrastructure that we have had and the infrastructure that needs to be continued to be built.
And can you just tell us a bit about your experience of working with young people? Because I know you do a lot behind the scenes anyway, as well, beyond Fyah Kamp.
Yes, I got into youth work when I was 18, a youth group called Fridays, set up by Tyler Campbell, to support young people that were going through difficult things at the time. It was a very tense time in the city, 2019 times. There was lots of knife crime. And I wanted to get into music because it was a way that young people express themselves. I feel like in the city currently, there's a lot of light. It's like, I refer to the city as a concrete jungle, and the concrete is the infrastructure. The concrete is the building, the environment we're in. But it's a jungle because there's so many beautiful colours, there's so many beautiful sounds, and there's so much, hiding in the trees. On the forest floor, there's so much there, but we've got to continue to colour in the trees, colour in the greenery so that this jungle flourishes, And I'll leave that to your imagination of what there is in the city. This past 4 days, the amount of talent we've had, the amount of young people that have come and expressed their colours has been beautiful. So yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about what you're currently doing with the young people? I know you've got lots of ideas, lots of things that you're involved in. What kind of other stuff has been happening, or can we expect to see?
More Fyah.
More Fyah.
Essentially, our plan at Fyah Kamp, we see ourselves as the bridge in between, the bridge from your youth club, your education, your university, your sixth forms, into the industry. We were talking about social media earlier. A lot of young people have their phones, and what are they looking at? They're looking at viral moments. They're looking at artists with millions of streams. And we need that bridge to bring young people from that realm of education where they need to get their qualifications, they need to go to youth club to maybe build a bit of confidence. But how do they then get to the industry? So we have 2 events, Fyah Fest, which has been taking place this year, it's a debut Fyah Fest, will be back next year, and Celebration, which is actually an award ceremony. It's happened for 2 years now, and it's a time where we can bring our young people together in a professional setting to give them their flowers for the hard work, because that's very important. And other than that, spin-off projects to continue to tell our story, It's important that the angle and the creative direction that we have in-house, as creatives ourselves, it's important we share the message of why we're doing what we're doing as well.
Thank you so much. If you haven't been to the Celebration event, it's incredible. Honestly, it blew me away. It was just so youth-driven, so vibrant. It's amazing. So, kudos to you for all the hard work that you and Taylor, your sister, do behind the scenes to pull this off. Because I think, speaking as someone who's come back to Coventry, I was born here, and this really wasn't here at the time, and now it's seeing this new confidence that, it's been very much driven from the grassroots up and by young people. And, you're doing amazing work, Ruben, so, hats off to you.
Thank you.
And thank you. Do you want to...
Yeah, could I just add as well, I like to use the expression of, I'd rather let the work talk, I'd rather let what we're doing talk for what needs to be done. But I think it's important to mention that, over the past few years, we've really had to kick down doors to get where we are. This festival has been a culmination of the community, bringing together people at organisations such as Coventry Boys and Girls Club, infrastructures and communities in our city such as the Coventry University, support from our, I don't know if this is the right word, but fellowship at the council, so people at the council who have supported us, our fellows, support from people like Media Mania and all our amazing youth groups. There's so many that have come together to do this for our young people. And the question I pose at the end of today is, why are we still here saying this without being publicly recognised? In the past, while I was planning this festival, I started planning this festival in July, and while I was planning this festival, there's been, in the past 2 or 3 weeks, there's been 2 shootings and a stabbing. And why have these young people not been safe, And to take it a step deeper, when the stabbing took place, it was up in Chelmsford, and I was getting petrol, and I was actually pulled over and questioned as a suspect. Why was I not recognised by the officer?
Greetings, and again, thank you for everybody in the room. I see you all, many familiar faces. Thank you to Colleen, who's been here from the beginning, of helping to curate this festival alongside Ruben. Thank you to Emma for the illuminating lens that has been put on our city. I'm very passionate about Coventry as a teacher, as a youth worker, as an individual from a dual heritage background, connected to Britain, connected to the Windrush generation. I think this festival that has been organised, and you've just heard the words from Ruben there, really does highlight that Coventry has real polar kind of opposites going on at the moment. We have an amazing community of doers, of activists, of creators. I think it's safe to say that everybody in this room is here because they care. And that is the underlying factor of youth work, of coming together to socialise, to create things, to celebrate culture. Coventry's in a place now where we have an international community. We're not just talking about those people of Caribbean heritage. We're not just talking of South Asian heritage. We're now talking about a global city. Young people and families and communities comprised of every country you can think of, every continent you can think of, right here in Coventry. That's a beauty, and I'll mention that I do feel professionally and as a community there has been almost like a middle passage, and I think what Emma has documented brilliantly in the book is what was capable, what was achievable, what was doable by young people who set out on a mission to make a space for themselves, to take up space. I'm of the generation that came in the middle passage, where many of those professionals were kind of diverting their career or slightly changing their career because of the adversity within the local authority. We heard some of the tactics and things that we used to take away space. And I know so many key role models, we were talking about relatable role models, so many key role models that without them, I wouldn't be here as an educated person with a degree, a teacher, a youth worker, a director of my own C.I.C. I wouldn't have raised my children the way I did. And I really feel that these role models from this age that Emma is particularly starting to reference in this book need, as Ruben said, their flowers. They need their kind of coming together and their story be told and documented. But furthermore, I think as a community, we should examine those skill sets, those privileged knowledges, those experiences that those key professionals hold, and kind of ensure that that is fully embodied and documented and handed on to these young people. Because as Ruben's just mentioned, unfortunately, there has been a rise of, key gang and violent kind of cultures around Coventry, and it isn't disappearing. And while we do have targeted youth work, targeted arts and community schemes that are running reliant on funding, Coventry as a community is calling out now for this kind of collective, let's come back together as a community, let's bring our artists, our community leaders, our professionals, and let's not be afraid to have this kind of community dialogue on a more of a regular, maybe, I say structured, but led by the community, because clearly our young people are advancing and moving and trying to come up with solutions to flourish, to be safe. And I think that middle passage of people that I'm speaking about, I think it's our time now to gather on a more regular basis and support these young people. We can go to boardrooms and apply for funding, but I know many, looking around the room, I can see all the faces where actually sometimes it's a simple favour within the community. It's a conversation, it's a sharing of knowledge, and that's why we're all still here, because we've persevered. So my message really from closing this current interaction is it's evident that the youth need us. It's evident that these spaces in Coventry have proved to be worth their weight in gold, you might say. You know, they hold a place, and I would like to continue to spearhead from the House of Emanuel that we endeavour to seek out and establish more safe spaces that are youth-led, but more importantly, bringing in that middle passage of professionals, of relatable role models to help them build that and construct that. So thank you to everybody in the room. Thank you for the university for giving us this amazing forum and opportunity to intersect with Emma's book launch. And thank you to the Deputy Lieutenant of the West Midlands for really helping us to give this the flag in the ground that I think it deserves, and a moment that we can take away now into our communities and continue the conversation. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emanuel, and thank you to you all for coming. Yeah, I'll echo that. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of the afternoon. Thank you. Thank you.